Section 3, trade and commerce. So we're not talking about marketplaces. Commerce means to exchange goods or monies in some way, shape, or form. As you can see in the background, we have some people who are at a counter. Imply that it could be some type of bank or marketplace. What brought most people to towns was business, meaning trade and commerce. And as trade and commerce grew, so did towns. So as you're reading this section and listening, think about these three questions. How did trade change from the beginning of the Middle Ages to the High Middle Ages? How did merchants become the most wealthy and powerful citizens of towns? How were Jews often mistreated in medieval Europe? And what opportunity was open to them? At the beginning of the Middle Ages, most trade was in luxury goods, which only the wealthy could afford, so not peasants and serfs. People made everyday necessities for themselves. But by the High Middle Ages, more local people were buying and selling more kinds of products, including everyday goods like food, clothing, and household items. Different towns also began specializing in producing certain goods, such as woolen cloth, glass, and silk. Keep in mind, luxury goods were usually from further away places, such as China, different parts of Asia. So that's why they were luxury, because it was a lot to bring them into these towns. And then the people who were selling them were selling them for a high amount of money, meaning these goods weren't made locally, they were made far away. But as trade was changing, people started to specialize in goods in a local setting, and then people could buy things locally as opposed from it being imported from somewhere else. Most towns had a market where food and local goods were bought and sold. Much larger were the great merchant fairs, which a town might hold a couple times a year. These fairs could attract merchants from many countries who sold goods from all over Europe, the Middle East, and beyond. So here is a picture, it would be something like this where you'd have different tents and people are selling different items at them. For these purposes, if you want to think about the Cranberry Festival and different town fairs where people are selling their own goods that they specialize in. With the growth of trade and commerce, merchants grew increasingly powerful and wealthy. They ran sizable businesses and looked for trading opportunities far from home. Merchant guilds came to dominate the business life of towns and cities. In towns that had become independent, members of merchant guilds often sat on town councils or elected mayor. So notice the merchants, the people who are buying and selling goods, are becoming the wealthier people. They're getting the goods, they're making the profit off of their sales. Not everyone prospered, however. Medieval towns commonly had sizable Jewish communities. But in Christian Europe, they often faced deep prejudice. So if you think back to when we were talking about the origins of Christianity, as the tension grew between Christians and Jews, that carried on many, many years later. The hostility of Christians, sometimes backed up by laws, made it difficult for Jews to earn their living. They were not allowed to own land, and their lords sometimes took their property and belongings at will. Jews could also be the targets of violence. So notice how it's a difference in religion here that is causing this prejudice and violence against another group. One opportunity that was open to Jews was to become bankers and moneylenders. This work was generally forbidden to Christians because the church taught that charging money for loans was sinful. So Jewish bankers and moneylenders performed an essential service for the economy. Still, they were often looked down upon and abused for practicing this wicked trade. So even though Christians forbade the idea of charging money for loans, so if you needed a loan, you would ask someone for a loan and they would say, okay, but it's also going to cost you this much extra. If I'm giving you this much money, you need to pay me something too. That was sinful according to the Christians, but it wasn't sinful according to Jews. So they took up that opportunity, which opened to them so that they could have a job. But still, the Christians needed it, but they couldn't do it. And the Jews who did, they were still looked down upon. And that is the end of section 3.